The sleek Rolls-Royce glided through the bustling streets of Beverly Hills, its tinted windows shielding Karim Al-Rahman from the harsh California sun. At 45, the Saudi-born business mogul had everything money could buy, yet the silence in his palatial mansion echoed with an emptiness that even his vast fortune couldn't fill. His 7-year-old son, Zain, sat quietly beside him, absorbed in his tablet, their relationship as sterile as the modern art adorning their home's walls. "Father, can we get ice cream?" Zain's hopeful voice broke through the rhythmic hum of the engine. Karim checked his Patek Philippe watch, another meeting in 20 minutes. "Not today, Zain. Perhaps tomorrow." The same answer he'd given yesterday and the day before. Zain's small shoulders slumped, a gesture that sent a familiar pang of guilt through Karim's chest, quickly buried under the weight of responsibilities awaiting him at Al-Rahman Enterprises. The car pulled up to the gated entrance of their estate, a Mediterranean-style mansion that sprawled across 3 acres of meticulously landscaped grounds. As Ahmad, their driver, punched in the security code, Karim's phone buzzed with another urgent email from the board. The quarterly reports showed concerning discrepancies that demanded his immediate attention. "Sir," Ahmad's voice crackled through the intercom, "there seems to be an issue with the gate." Karim sighed, already reaching for his phone to call maintenance. As Ahmad stepped out to check the mechanism, Zain suddenly unbuckled his seatbelt. "Look, father, a butterfly!" Before Karim could react, Zain had pushed open the door and darted out onto the street, chasing after the delicate orange wings that had caught his attention. Time seemed to slow as Karim watched in horror through the window. A delivery truck was approaching from around the bend, its driver unaware of the small boy who had just stepped into its path. Karim's throat constricted, his body frozen in that eternal moment between recognition and action. But then something extraordinary happened. A figure seemed to materialize from nowhere, an elderly woman in worn clothing who moved with surprising agility. She swept Zain into her arms, pulling him back just as the truck rushed past, its horn blaring in angry protest. Karim burst from the car, his legs nearly giving way as he reached for his son. Zain, more startled than frightened, clung to the strange woman who had saved him. She was small and weathered, her silver hair tucked beneath a faded scarf, her clothes clean but clearly well worn. Despite her apparent poverty, she carried herself with quiet dignity. "Allah be praised," Karim breathed, holding Zain close. I cannot thank you enough. Please let me reward you for your courage." He reached for his wallet, but the woman held up a hand, her deep brown eyes holding a wisdom that gave him pause. "Money is not what I seek, Mr. Al-Rahman," she said, her voice carrying a hint of an accent he couldn't quite place. "Though I would not refuse an opportunity to earn my way." Karim studied her more carefully now, struck by the fact that she knew his name. There was something familiar about her features, something that tugged at the edges of his memory. "You know who I am?" A sad smile crossed her weathered face. "I know more than you might think. My name is Rosa Martinez, and years ago my daughter Maria worked in your home." She paused, her eyes growing distant. "Before she left us, the name hit Karim like a physical blow. Maria Martinez. He hadn't heard that name in years, hadn't allowed himself to think about the young woman who had brought such warmth to his household during the brief time there. The circumstances of her departure had always remained unclear to him, lost in the chaos of business expansions and international deals. "Please," Rosa continued, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes, "I don't ask for charity. I ask for work, for purpose, and perhaps for a chance to honor my daughter's memory in the place she once called home." As Karim stood there, his son's hand in his, facing this woman who had not only saved Zain, but now offered a connection to a past he had never fully understood. He felt the first tremors of change in his carefully ordered world. Little did he know that this moment, this chance encounter outside his gates, would unravel secrets that had lain dormant for years and force him to question everything he had built his life upon. The butterfly that had led Zain into danger now rested on a nearby hedge, its wings gently opening and closing as if waiting to see what would happen next. And in that moment, Karim Al-Rahman made a decision that would alter not only his life but the lives of everyone connected to his vast empire. The decision to invite Rosa Martinez into his home wasn't made lightly. As Karim led her through the imposing front doors of his mansion, He couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping into something far more significant than a simple act of charity. Zain, usually shy around strangers, held tightly to Rosa's hand, chattering about his butterfly adventure with an animation Karim hadn't seen in months. "Your home has changed much," Rosa observed, her eyes taking in the stark modern furniture and minimalist decor that had replaced the warmer touches of years past. Maria always said this place needed more soul than money could buy. The mention of Maria's name again sent a ripple of unease through Karim. He remembered her as a bright presence in the house, someone who had treated Zain, then just a baby, with genuine affection rather than the professional detachment of their other staff. Her sudden departure had coincided with some troubling financial discrepancies, but he'd been too consumed with damage control to investigate properly. "Mrs. Martinez," he began, leading her to his study. "You mentioned wanting work. May I ask what skills you possess?" Rosa settled into one of the leather chairs with unexpected grace. "I was an accountant in my younger years, before life took unexpected turns. Numbers have a way of telling stories, Mr. Al-Rahman. They reveal truths that words often hide." This caught Karim's attention. Just that morning, he'd been puzzling over the latest financial reports. Something wasn't adding up in the books, hadn't been for months, but his cousin and business partner, Tariq, had assured him it was merely the result of their rapid expansion into new markets. "The past few years haven't been kind," Rosa continued, her hands folded neatly in her lap. After we lost her, I made some poor decisions. Pride kept me from seeking help until it was too late. But I haven't lost my skills nor my integrity." As she spoke, Zain had wandered to her side again, leaning against her chair with the comfortable familiarity of a child who had found a kindred spirit. The sight stirred something in Karim, a memory of his own grandmother perhaps, or the vague recollections of warmth and belonging from his childhood in Saudi Arabia, before business and success had become his only measures of worth. "Tell me about Maria," he found himself asking. "What happened after she left here?" A shadow passed across Rosa's face. "She never really told me why she left so suddenly. She was troubled in her last months here, worried about something she'd discovered. But before she could explain," Rosa's voice caught slightly. "We lost her to illness shortly after." Karim felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. He remembered now. There had been something Maria had wanted to discuss with him, something important. But Tariq had said she'd resigned for personal reasons before the meeting could take place. "I have a proposition for you, Mrs. Martinez," Karim said, making a decision that felt both impulsive and somehow inevitable. "I find myself in need of someone with your particular skills. Someone who can look at our books with fresh eyes and perhaps help me understand some inconsistencies I've noticed." Rosa's eyes sharpened with interest. "And where would I stay?" "I have no home at present. We have a guest house on the grounds," Karim replied, thinking of the comfortable cottage that had once been Maria's residence. "It needs some updating, but it could be yours along with a fair salary, if you're willing to help me unravel these financial puzzles. And perhaps," Rosa added softly, glancing at Zain, who had fallen asleep against her chair, "I could help with other things as well. Your son needs more than tutors and nannies, Mr. Al-Rahman. He needs family." The word family echoed in the vast study, highlighting its emptiness. Karim looked at his sleeping son, then at this remarkable woman who had already saved him in more ways than one. "Yes," he said finally, "perhaps we all do." As they finalized the details of their arrangement, neither could have predicted how their lives would intertwine, nor the secrets that lay buried in the carefully maintained records of Al-Rahman Enterprises. Rosa Martinez had come seeking purpose, but she had brought with her the keys to a mystery that would shake the foundations of Karim's carefully constructed world, and perhaps help him build something far more precious in its place. Rosa Martinez settled into her new role at Al-Rahman Enterprises with the quiet efficiency of someone who had spent a lifetime working with numbers. Within days, she had transformed the guest house into a cozy home, filling it with the warmth that seemed to follow her wherever she went. But it was in Karim's private office, surrounded by financial statements and digital records, that her true value began to emerge. "These numbers don't align," she said one evening, her reading glasses perched on her nose as she studied the company's recent acquisitions. "See here? The purchasing prices for these subsidiaries are inflated, but the excess funds aren't accounted for in any of the standard channels." Karim leaned over her shoulder, frowning at the spreadsheets. The more he looked, the more he saw patterns that had escaped his notice before. Transactions that seemed legitimate at first glance, but held subtle discrepancies when examined more closely. And many of them bore his cousin Tariq's digital signature. "I've trusted Tariq with these acquisitions for years," Karim murmured, more to himself than to Rosa. "He's family. He helped build this company from the ground up." Rosa's eyes held a gentle understanding. "Sometimes those closest to us can disappoint us the most. Maria used to say." She caught herself, a flash of pain crossing her features before she composed herself. She noticed things too during her time here. Before Karim could press for more details, the door burst open and Zain bounded in, his face bright with excitement. "Grandma Rosa, Father, look what I made in art class today." He proudly held up a painting of what appeared to be three figures standing in front of a house. A tall man in a suit, a small boy, and an elderly woman with silver hair. Rosa's eyes misted as she took the painting. "It's beautiful, mi pequeño. Is this all of us?" "Yes, see, that's Father's office. And there's you and me, and Father is smiling because he's not working so much anymore." Zain's innocent observation struck Karim like a physical blow. Had he really been so absent that his own son noticed such a dramatic change? "You're right, Habibi," Karim said softly, running a hand through his son's dark hair. "I am smiling more these days." He caught Rosa's knowing look and felt a surge of gratitude for the changes she had brought to their lives in such a short time. Later that night, after Zain had gone to bed, Karim found himself walking through the moonlit gardens toward Rosa's cottage. The lights were still on, and he could see her silhouette through the window, bent over what looked like old photographs. He hesitated, then knocked softly. Rosa opened the door, unsurprised to see him. "I was wondering when you'd come asking about her," she said, stepping aside to let him in. The cottage's interior was a stark contrast to the main house. Warm colors, comfortable furnishings, and walls already decorated with family photos. Among them, Karim spotted a familiar face that made his heart skip a beat. "Maria," he breathed, approaching a photograph of a young woman with her mother's same warm eyes and gentle smile. "I never knew. There was so much I never knew." Rosa settled into an armchair, watching him closely. She loved working here, you know, not just for the salary, which was generous, but because she believed in what this company could be. What you could be if you remembered that business isn't just about profit margins and market shares. "What was she trying to tell me?" Karim asked, turning to face Rosa. "Before she left, she wanted to meet with me about something important, but Tariq said she'd resigned suddenly and then we lost her," Rosa finished quietly. She was troubled in her final months. She'd discovered something that frightened her, but she never told me what it was. All she said was that the truth was in the numbers, if anyone cared to look deep enough. Karim's mind raced, connecting dots he'd never seen before. The timing of Maria's departure, the financial discrepancies that seemed to stretch back years, Tariq's increasing nervousness whenever anyone questioned the company's acquisition strategies. "I need your help, Rosa," he said finally. "Not just with the numbers, but with everything. I've spent so long building this empire that I forgot why I started it in the first place. To create something meaningful, something that would make a difference in people's lives." Rosa stood, placing a weathered hand on his arm. "That's why I'm here, Mr. Al-Rahman. Not just to uncover the truth about the past, but to help build a better future. For you, for Zain, and for Maria's memory." As Karim walked back to the main house that night, he felt both unsettled and oddly hopeful. Tomorrow, he would begin a deeper investigation into Tariq's dealings. But for now, he found himself thinking about Zain's painting. The simple wish of a child to see his father happy, and the unexpected family they were becoming, brought together by fate, the butterfly's wings. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Al-Rahman Enterprises' executive floor as Karim sat in his office, reviewing the files Rosa had carefully compiled. Each document added another piece to a puzzle he wasn't sure he wanted to complete. The evidence was becoming harder to ignore. Systematic inflation of acquisition costs, ghost vendors, and a complex web of offshore accounts that all seemed to lead back to his cousin. "Mr. Al-Rahman," his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mr. Tariq is here to see you about the Singapore merger." Karim straightened his tie, steeling himself. "Send him in." Tariq swept into the office with his usual confidence. Designer suit impeccable, smile as bright as ever. But now, Karim noticed the slight tension around his eyes, the way his hands moved restlessly as he spoke about profit projections and market expansion. "The Singapore deal is practically finalized," Tariq was saying, sliding a thick contract across the desk. "We just need your signature to proceed with the funds transfer." Karim picked up the contract but didn't open it. "Tell me, cousin, do you remember Maria Martinez?" The question caught Tariq off guard. For a fraction of a second, his smile faltered. "The former accounting clerk. That was years ago. Why do you ask?" "Her mother works for us now," Karim said casually, watching his cousin's reaction. "She's been helping me review our historical records. Fascinating what you can find in old files." Tariq's laugh was just a beat too late, too sharp. "Surely you have better things to do than dig through ancient history. The Singapore deal needs your immediate attention. The window of opportunity is closing. Everything's a rush with you lately, isn't it, Tariq? Just like when Maria left. One day she was requesting an urgent meeting with me. The next you're telling me she resigned for personal reasons. I never even got to speak with her." "Ancient history," Tariq repeated, his voice harder now. "We have more important matters to discuss. The board is expecting us to move forward with this merger." Karim stood, walking to the window that overlooked the city. "I've been blind, haven't I? So focused on expansion, on proving myself in this country, that I couldn't see what was happening in my own company, with my own family." "What exactly are you implying?" Tariq's tone turned defensive. Before Karim could respond, there was a knock at the door. Rosa entered carrying a tablet. She nodded politely to Tariq, whose face had drained of color at the sight of him. "The files you requested, Mr. Al-Rahman," she said, placing the tablet on his desk, "including the original purchase agreements for the last 5 acquisitions before the numbers were adjusted." Tariq's composure cracked. "You can't possibly believe the words of some woman off the street. I'm your family, Karim. Everything I've done has been for this company's benefit." "Family." Karim's voice was quiet but firm. "Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't lie. And family certainly doesn't try to silence those who discover the truth." He turned to face his cousin fully. "What really happened with Maria, Tariq? What did she find that made her such a threat?" The tension in the room was palpable. Rosa stood quietly by the door, her presence a reminder of all that had been lost, and all that could still be saved. Tariq straightened, adjusting his tie. "I see you've made up your mind to believe the worst of me. Very well, but remember, cousin, I know every detail of these dealings. Any attempt to expose them will only damage your reputation as well. The board won't look kindly on such negligent oversight from their CEO." "Perhaps," Karim agreed, "but I'd rather face the consequences of the truth than continue living with lies." He pressed a button on his desk phone. "Security will escort you out to them. Don't leave the country. The authorities will have questions." As Tariq was led away, his threats echoing down the hallway, Rosa approached Karim's desk. "Maria would be proud of you," she said softly. "She always believed you were a good man who had just lost his way." Karim sank into his chair, suddenly exhausted. "There's still so much to untangle, so much damage to repair. The board will need to be notified, investigations launched." He trailed off, thinking of the chaos that would follow. "One step at a time," Rosa advised, her warm hand squeezing his shoulder. "You're not alone anymore. And speaking of not being alone, don't you have a promise to keep to a certain young man about ice cream after school today?" Despite everything, Karim found himself smiling. "I do indeed. Would you like to join us, Rosa? I think we could all use something sweet after today." As they left the office together, Karim realized that while one chapter of his life might be ending in turmoil, another was beginning with unexpected hope. The empire he built might shake, but the foundation of what truly mattered, family, truth, and redemption, was stronger than ever. The news of Tariq's removal from Al-Rahman Enterprises broke like a thunderstorm across the business community. The morning headlines screamed of corporate scandal, and Karim's phone hadn't stopped ringing since dawn. Board members demanded explanations, partners sought reassurance, and reporters clamored for statements. In his home office, surrounded by news articles and crisis management proposals, Karim found an unexpected moment of peace watching Zain and Rosa in the garden below. They were planting flowers, Rosa's idea to bring more color to the precisely manicured landscape. His son's laughter floated up through the open window, a sound that had become wonderfully common in recent weeks. "Mr. Hal Rahman," his assistant's voice interrupted his thoughts. "The board members are assembled in the conference room awaiting your video call." Karim straightened his tie, centered himself, and connected to the video conference. 12 familiar faces appeared on his screen, their expressions ranging from concern to barely concealed anger. "Gentlemen, ladies," he began, his voice steady. "I know you have questions about recent events. I'm prepared to provide full transparency about what we've discovered and the steps we're taking to address these issues. This is unprecedented, Al-Rahman," Bernard Matthews, the lead director, cut in. "The press is having a field day. Our stock has dropped 15 points since the market opened." "Yes," Karim acknowledged, "and it may drop further before this is over. But consider this. We discovered these irregularities internally. We're taking decisive action to correct them. That shows strength, not weakness." As Karim presented the evidence Rosa had helped compile, he saw the board members' expressions slowly shift from skepticism to understanding. The documentation was irrefutable, years of systematic fraud, carefully hidden but now exposed to the light. "The question remains," Sarah Chen, another director, spoke up. "How did this go undetected for so long? Where was the oversight?" Karim took a deep breath. "The responsibility ultimately lies with me. I trusted family without verification. I focused on expansion while neglecting proper controls. These are mistakes I won't repeat. And this, Mrs. Martinez," Matthews interjected. "How can we be certain her findings are reliable? Her daughter's previous employment here presents a potential conflict of interest." "Rosa Martinez has 40 years of accounting experience," Karim replied firmly. "Every finding has been independently verified by our external auditors. And yes, her personal connection to this company has proved invaluable. She saw what we all missed because she cared enough to look deeper." The meeting continued for hours, but by the end, Karim had secured the board's cautious support for his recovery plan. As he disconnected from the call, he heard a soft knock at his door. Rosa entered, carrying a tray with Arabic coffee and her infamous homemade cookies, a new addition to the household that had quickly become everyone's favorite. "I thought you might need this," she said, setting the tray down. Zain helped with the cookies. He was very concerned about making sure they were perfect for his father. Karim smiled, touched by the gesture. "How is he handling all this? Children pick up on more than we think." "He's stronger than you know," Rosa replied, pouring the coffee. "This morning, he told me he was proud of you for being a superhero who fights bad guys in business suits." Karim couldn't help but laugh. "A superhero? I feel more like a captain trying to steady a ship in a storm." "Sometimes they're the same thing," Rosa said wisely. "Speaking of which, I've been reviewing the company's charitable initiatives. Did you know that Maria had drafted a proposal for an educational foundation before she left? I found it in some old files." Karim's interest piqued. "I never saw that proposal." "No, I imagine Tariq made sure you didn't." Rosa pulled out a worn folder from her bag. "It's quite remarkable. A program to provide technology education and business training to underprivileged youth. Maria believed that true success meant lifting others as you climb." As Karim read through the proposal, he felt something shift inside him. Here was a way to not only repair the company's reputation, but to create something meaningful, something that would honor Maria's memory and perhaps help prevent others from facing the hardships Rosa had endured. "We could implement this," he said slowly. "Expand it, not just education, but mentorship, job placement." He looked up at Rosa. "Would you consider heading the foundation? You have the perfect combination of financial expertise and personal understanding of the needs we'd be addressing." Rosa's eyes widened in surprise. "Me? But surely there are more qualified on paper, perhaps," Karim interrupted gently. "But you've shown me that qualifications aren't just about degrees and certifications. They're about wisdom, compassion, and the courage to stand up for what's right." Before Rosa could respond, they heard the pattering of small feet in the hallway. Zain burst in, his clothes smudged with dirt from gardening, his face beaming. "Father, Grandma Rosa, come see what we planted. The butterflies are already visiting our flowers." Karim stood, reaching for Rosa's hand to help her up. "Well, we can't keep the butterflies waiting, can we? We'll discuss the foundation more over dinner." As they followed Zain to the garden, Karim reflected on how his definition of success had changed in recent weeks. The storm around his company wasn't over, but for the first time he felt truly equipped to face it, not because of his wealth or power, but because he finally understood what he was fighting for. The weeks following Tariq's departure brought changes to Al Rahman Enterprises that few could have predicted. The company's stock had stabilized, helped by Karim's transparent handling of the crisis and the announcement of the new educational foundation. But the most significant transformations were happening within the walls of the Al Rahman home. The formal dining room, once used only for business entertainment, now hosted nightly family dinners. Tonight, the air was filled with the aroma of Rosa's cooking, a fusion of Middle Eastern and Latin American flavors that had become the household's favorite cuisine. And then Jessica said she wants to come for a play date. Zain chatted excitedly between bites. Can she, father? Her mum could meet Grandma Rosa too. Karim exchanged glances with Rosa, remembering a time not so long ago when he would have automatically deflected such requests to the nanny. Of course, Habibi. Perhaps this weekend? Really? Zain's face lit up. We can show her the butterfly garden. The butterfly garden had been Rosa's latest project, transforming a corner of the formal gardens into a vibrant, natural space that attracted not only butterflies, but also daily visits from neighboring families. It had become a symbol of the changes in their lives, the way beauty and connection could flourish in unexpected places. Speaking of the garden, Rosa said, serving more food onto Karim's plate despite his protests, I had an idea for the foundation's first project. What if we started with community gardens in underserved neighborhoods, teaching business principles through urban farming initiatives? Karim leaned back, considering. Combining practical skills with business education, Maria would have loved that approach. She always said the best solutions were the ones that grew naturally, Rosa agreed, her eyes misting slightly at the mention of her daughter. Like the way she learned accounting, helping me manage the books for our neighbor's bodega when she was just a girl. After dinner, as Zain worked on his homework under Rosa's patient guidance, Karim retreated to his study to review the latest foundation proposals. The folder containing Maria's original ideas lay open on his desk, her handwriting a poignant reminder of opportunities lost and found again. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Come in, he called, expecting Rosa. Instead, Ahmad, his longtime driver, entered looking somewhat uncertain. Sir, I hope I'm not overstepping, but... Ahmad hesitated, then continued. I've been thinking about Mrs. Martinez's community garden idea. My wife, she teaches at the local elementary school. The children there, many come from families struggling to put food on the table. A garden project could make a real difference. Karim studied his driver with new eyes, remembering Rosa's words about wisdom coming from unexpected places. Tell me more, Ahmad. In fact, why don't you join the Foundation's planning committee? We need people with real community connections. Ahmad's face brightened. Really, sir? Thank you. I have so many ideas. Later that evening, Karim found Rosa in her cottage, surrounded by papers and photographs. She was creating a memorial album, she'd explained, not to dwell on loss, but to celebrate the connections that had brought them all together. Look what I found, she said as he entered, holding up a photograph. Maria's college graduation. She was already working here part-time. Remember, you sent flowers. Karim took the photo, memories flooding back. She was so proud that day. She had such big dreams for making a difference in the world. And now you're making those dreams reality, Rosa said softly. Though perhaps not in the way any of us expected. Life rarely follows our expectations, Karim replied, thinking of how a chance encounter outside his gates had set in motion changes he could never have imagined. Sometimes it gives us something better than we knew to dream of. A burst of laughter from outside drew their attention. Through the cottage window, they could see Zain chasing fireflies in the growing dusk, his joy as bright as the tiny lights he pursued. He's so different now, Rosa observed. More confident, more open. Children bloom when they're rooted in love. We all do, Karim said quietly. I spent years building walls around myself, around this family, thinking I was creating something strong. But real strength comes from opening up, from letting people in. Rosa squeezed his hand. It's never too late to plant new seeds, mijijo. Look how much has grown already. As they watched Zain play in the gathering darkness, Karim felt a profound sense of peace. The company's challenges were far from over, and there would always be new obstacles to face. But he was no longer facing them alone. In losing what he thought he needed, absolute control, unquestioning loyalty, the illusion of perfect order, he had gained something far more valuable, a true family, a deeper purpose, and the wisdom to know the difference. The autumn breeze rustled through the newly planted trees around Al Rahman Enterprises' first community garden. What had once been an empty lot in one of the city's struggling neighborhoods was now transformed into a vibrant space filled with raised beds, a teaching pavilion, and the sound of children's laughter. Karim stood at the edge of the garden, watching as Rosa led a group of local mothers through a basic business planning workshop. She had a way of making complex financial concepts accessible, weaving in stories and practical examples that resonated with their experiences. Behind them, Zain was enthusiastically helping younger children plant fall vegetables, sharing his newfound gardening expertise with infectious enthusiasm. Mr. Al-Rahman? A young woman approached him, holding a familiar-looking folder. "I'm Rebecca Torres from the City Archives. Mrs. Martinez asked me to look into some old records, and I found something that might interest you." Karim followed her to a quiet corner of the pavilion. The folder contained property records and old newspapers from the time Maria had worked for him. As he scanned the documents, his heart began to race. "These property evaluations," he said slowly, "they're for the same locations Tariq used in his scheme, but from 5 years earlier." Rebecca nodded. "Yes, and look who signed off on them. Maria Martinez. She was compiling evidence, Mr. Al-Rahman. She had discovered the groundwork of your cousin's fraud before it even began." The pieces suddenly fell into place. Maria hadn't just stumbled upon financial irregularities. She had uncovered Tariq's entire plan in its infancy. The urgent meeting she had requested, her sudden departure. It all made terrible sense now. "There's more," Rebecca continued, pulling out a sealed envelope. This was in Maria's personal effects at the archive. "It's addressed to you, dated the week before she left." With trembling hands, Karim opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written in Maria's neat handwriting. "Dear Mr. Al-Rahman, if you're reading this, something has prevented me from telling you these things in person. I've discovered a pattern of property manipulation that I believe is only the beginning of a larger scheme. The evidence is all here, but more importantly, I need you to know why I'm coming to you directly. Your cousin Tariq approached me last week. He offered me a significant sum to misplace certain records. When I refused, he reminded me of my mother's financial situation, suggested that accidents can happen to people who don't cooperate. I'm not afraid for myself, but I can't put my mother at risk. I believe in what you're trying to build here, Mr. Al-Rahman. Not just a successful company, but a legacy of positive change. Don't let anyone corrupt that vision. With hope and respect, Maria Martinez." Karim's vision blurred as he finished reading. All these years he had been so focused on expansion, on proving himself in a foreign business world, that he had missed what was happening right under his nose. And Maria had paid a heavy price for her integrity. "Father?" Zain's voice broke through his thoughts. "Are you okay? You look sad." Karim quickly wiped his eyes, turning to find his son and Rosa watching him with concern. "I'm all right, Habibi. I just learned something important about an old friend who was very brave." Rosa moved closer, catching sight of the letter in his hands. Her sharp intake of breath told him she had recognized her daughter's handwriting. "Maria," she whispered. "She tried to stop it all before it began." "She did more than that," Karim said, gathering both Rosa and Zain close. "She showed us what real courage looks like, and now we're finally building the kind of company she believed in." As if on cue, a butterfly landed on one of the newly planted flowers nearby. Zain's face lit up. "Look, just like the one that brought us Grandma Rosa." "Yes," Karim smiled, watching as more butterflies danced through the garden. Sometimes the smallest things can lead to the biggest changes. Later that evening, as they sat in Rosa's cottage, sharing tea and memories, Karim made an announcement. "I want to rename the foundation," he said. "The Maria Martinez Foundation for Community Empowerment. A tribute to the woman who stood up for what was right, no matter the cost." Rosa's eyes filled with tears, but her smile was radiant. She would be so proud to see all this, not just the foundation, but this family we've become. She always said that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives you touch. And she was right, Karim agreed, watching as Zain dozed peacefully on the cottage's comfortable couch. I thought I was building an empire, but really, I was just constructing walls around my heart. It took losing someone brave to help me find something precious. The autumn evening wrapped around them like a warm embrace. The garden outside coming alive with crickets and fireflies. In the distance, the city skyline glittered with possibility. A reminder that sometimes the greatest victories come not from fighting battles, but from opening hearts to unexpected blessings. The boardroom of Al Rahman Enterprises had never seen anything quite like this meeting. Instead of the usual array of stern-faced executives discussing profit margins, the long table was surrounded by community leaders, educators, and local business owners. At the head of the table, Rosa Martinez commanded attention as she presented the expanded vision for the Maria Martinez Foundation. The community gardens were just the beginning, she explained, her confidence growing with each word. We're now ready to launch Phase 2, a comprehensive business incubator program that will provide mentorship, seed funding, and practical education to aspiring entrepreneurs from underserved communities. Karim watched from his seat, filled with pride at how far they'd come. The woman who had once been hesitant to accept a position of authority now spoke with the assurance of someone who knew her true worth. The foundation's success had exceeded all expectations, attracting support from other major corporations and even international interest. Mrs. Martinez, Sarah Chen, the board member who had once questioned Rosa's credentials, spoke up. These results are remarkable. The positive press alone has more than offset any temporary damage from the previous situation. But more importantly, the real impact on communities is undeniable. Impact isn't just about numbers, Rosa replied, sharing a knowing look with Karim. It's about people, like Ahmad's wife's students who now have fresh vegetables for lunch every day. Or like young Miguel there, she gestured to a teenager sitting proudly at the table, who started his own landscaping business through our Youth Entrepreneur Program. Miguel, who had been one of the first participants in the community garden project, straightened in his chair. The foundation didn't just teach me about business, he said. It showed me that someone believed in me. That's worth more than any loan. After the meeting, Karim found himself walking through the company's newly redesigned lobby. Where there had once been cold marble and intimidating security barriers, now there was an open, welcoming space. A wall of windows looked out onto a butterfly garden that mirrored the one at his home. And a portrait of Maria Martinez hung prominently, a warm smile greeting visitors. Mr. Al-Rahman, a security guard approached, looking somewhat nervous. Sorry to bother you, sir, but my daughter is doing a school project on business ethics, and I was wondering, would it be possible for her to interview you about the foundation? 5 years ago, Karim might have dismissed such a request without a second thought. Now, he found himself smiling. Better yet, why don't you bring her to our next youth leadership workshop? She can see firsthand what we're building here. The guard's face lit up. Thank you, sir. You know, ever since Mrs. Martinez started those employee development programs, it feels like we're all part of something bigger. We are, Karim agreed, thinking of how much had changed. The company's profits were higher than ever, but that no longer seemed like the most important measure of success. He made his way to the parking lot, where Rosa and Zain were waiting. They had a standing Thursday tradition now, volunteer work at the community garden, followed by dinner at a small family restaurant that had received one of the foundation's first business development grants. Father, Zain called out, waving excitedly. Guess what? My school wants to start a garden too. Can we help them? Grandma Rosa already has ideas. Of course we can, Habibi, Karim laughed, helping Rosa into the car. Although I'm beginning to think your Grandma Rosa has ideas for taking over the entire city, one garden at a time. Rosa's eyes twinkled. Why stop at the city? Maria always dreamed big. She would say, Mummy, if you're going to plant seeds, make sure they're seeds of change. As they drove through the city streets, Karim noticed how many of the once empty lots now bloomed with community gardens. Each one was a testament to Maria's legacy, to Rosa's wisdom, and to the power of choosing love over fear, connection over isolation. You know, he said thoughtfully, I used to think success meant having everyone look up to you. Now I realize it's about lifting others up so they can stand beside you. And having a family to share it with, Zayn added wisely from the back seat, making both adults smile. Yes, mi amor, Rosa agreed, patting Karim's hand. Family, purpose, and a garden full of butterflies. What more could anyone need? The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant colors as they drove home, its warm light touching the gardens that dotted the city like gems. Each one was a reminder that sometimes the greatest transformations begin with the smallest acts of courage, and that true wealth grows not in vaults or ledgers, but in the hearts of those we choose to call family. The grand ballroom of the Beverly Hills Hotel sparkled with elegance as the city's most influential figures gathered for the first annual Maria Martinez Foundation Gala. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables adorned with centerpieces created by the Foundation's youth gardening program. Elegant arrangements of locally grown flowers that told their own story of transformation. Karim adjusted his bow tie nervously as he prepared to address the crowd. Public speaking had never made him anxious before, but tonight felt different. This wasn't about business metrics or market projections. It was about something far more personal. Father, Zayn tugged at his sleeve, looking dapper in his miniature tuxedo. Everyone from my class came. Even Principal Thompson is here. Indeed, Karim spotted several familiar faces from Zayn's school among the crowd. The Foundation's educational initiatives had created unexpected bridges between communities that had once seemed worlds apart. Rosa appeared beside them, elegant in a deep blue gown, her silver hair styled gracefully. "Are you ready?" she asked Karim softly. Maria would be so proud of this moment. Before he could respond, Sarah Chen from the board approached with an elderly gentleman in tow. "Mr. Al-Rahman, I'd like you to meet James Morrison from the National Business Ethics Committee. He's been following our community development model with great interest." "Actually," Morrison interjected, "we're here to do more than observe. We'd like to implement your program nationwide. The combination of business education, community development, and environmental sustainability is exactly what we've been looking for." Karim exchanged a meaningful look with Rosa. Their small project had grown beyond anything they'd imagined. But before they could discuss details, it was time for the evening's program to begin. As Karim took the stage, he saw faces both familiar and new in the audience. Ahmad and his wife sat with their daughter, who had started a successful tutoring program through the foundation. Miguel, now running a thriving landscaping business, was teaching other young entrepreneurs his trade. Even some of Tariq's former business associates were there, having chosen to support the Foundation's mission of ethical business practices. 1 year ago, Karim began, his voice steady with conviction. "I stood in a garden that had once been an empty lot, watching butterflies dance among newly planted flowers. It reminded me of another butterfly, the one that led my son across a street and brought an extraordinary woman into our lives." He gestured to Rosa, who smiled through tears as the audience applauded. That butterfly set in motion a chain of events that would uncover not just corporate wrongdoing, but a deeper truth about what really matters in life. We discovered that true success isn't measured in profit margins or market share, but in the lives we touch and the changes we inspire. As Karim spoke about the Foundation's achievements, the dozen community gardens, the successful business incubator program, the educational initiatives, he saw heads nodding in recognition. These weren't just statistics. They were stories of real people whose lives had been transformed. But none of this would have been possible without Maria Martinez, he continued, his voice softening as he gestured to the large portrait of her that graced the stage. A young woman who believed in doing what was right no matter the cost, who saw the potential for good in this company, even when others lost their way. Rosa stepped forward then, joining him on stage to present the first Maria Martinez Courage in Ethics Awards to 3 young business students who had demonstrated exceptional commitment to community service and ethical leadership. Later, as the evening wound down, Karim found himself in a quiet corner with Rosa and Zayn, watching as guests mingled and danced. The Foundation's Youth Orchestra, another new initiative, played softly in the background. "Look at all these people," Rosa marveled. "Each one carrying a piece of Maria's dream forward in their own way." "And it's just the beginning," Karim replied, watching as Zayn taught some of his classmates the traditional Arabic dance he'd recently learned. "The national program will help us reach so many more communities. More butterflies, Yes, Habibi, Karim agreed. More butterflies, and more gardens for them to visit. As the evening drew to a close, a young reporter approached their table. Mr. Al-Rahman, everyone wants to know, what's next for the foundation? Karim looked at Rosa, who had become not just his partner in this venture, but a true mother figure in his life. Her wisdom had guided them this far, and he knew there were still more dreams to fulfill. We're just getting started, he said, smiling as another group of children ran past, their laughter echoing through the elegant ballroom. After all, every garden needs time to grow. Spring had returned to Beverly Hills, and with it came the first anniversary of Rosa's arrival at the Al-Rahman estate. The once formal gardens had been transformed into a living tapestry of colors and textures, where carefully tended roses now mingled with wildflowers, and perfectly trimmed hedges gave way to natural butterfly habitats. Karim stood at his office window, watching as Rosa conducted her weekly gardening class for local children. What had started as a small community outreach program had blossomed into a beloved tradition, drawing families from all walks of life to learn about nature, sustainability, and the importance of nurturing both plants and dreams. Mr. Al-Rahman? His assistant's voice interrupted his reverie. The final documents from the Ethics Committee have arrived for your review. The thick folder on his desk contained the framework for implementing the Foundation's program nationwide. It was a testament to how far they'd come from those tumultuous days when Tariq's schemes had threatened to destroy everything. As he reviewed the papers, a familiar photograph caught his eye, one he kept on his desk as a reminder. It showed Maria Martinez on her first day at Al-Rahman Enterprises, her smile bright with hope and determination. Beside it sat a more recent photo, Zain and Rosa at the Community Gardens Harvest Festival, their faces glowing with joy as they presented their prize-winning vegetables. "Father!" Zain burst into the office, his school uniform slightly dirty from what had clearly been an enthusiastic gardening session. "Guess what? My science project about butterflies won first place, and Ms. Thompson says we can present it at the Foundation's next youth conference." Karim set aside the documents, giving his son his full attention, a habit that had become second nature over the past year. "That's wonderful, Habibi. Tell me all about it." As Zain launched into an excited explanation about butterfly migration patterns and their role in pollination, Rosa appeared in the doorway, her gardening apron dusty with soil. "Don't forget to tell your father about your other news," she prompted gently. Zain's eyes lit up even more. "Oh yes, remember Jessica from my class? Her mother was having trouble with their family restaurant, so I told her about the Foundation's business program. They had their first meeting today, and Grandma Rosa says their plan is excellent." "Did she now?" Karim smiled at Rosa, who had proven to have an uncanny ability to spot promising entrepreneurs. "Well, we'll have to visit this restaurant once they've implemented their improvements." "Actually," Rosa interjected, "I thought we might discuss something else first." She pulled out a worn notebook that Karim recognized as Maria's old journal. "I found something interesting while organizing the Foundation's archives." She opened the notebook to a carefully marked page. Maria had sketched out plans for a youth leadership academy. She envisioned a place where young people could learn about business ethics, community service, and sustainable development. All the things we're doing now, but on an even larger scale. Karim took the notebook, studying the detailed notes and drawings. "This is remarkable." She saw the potential for all of this even back then. "And now we have the resources and experience to make it happen," Rosa added. "The national program is just the beginning. Imagine what we could do with a dedicated facility for training the next generation of ethical business leaders." "Can I help design it?" Zain asked eagerly. "We need lots of gardens and a butterfly house, and maybe a place where kids whose parents are busy can stay after school to learn about business and nature." Karim looked at his son with pride, remembering the quiet, lonely child he had been just a year ago. Now Zain spoke with confidence and compassion, already showing signs of becoming the kind of leader the world needed. "Of course you can help, Habibi," he said. "In fact, I think we should all work on this together, as a family." Rosa's eyes misted over at the word family, but her smile was radiant. Maria always said that the best gardens are the ones tended by many hands. She would be so happy to see how her small seeds of change have grown. As if in response to her words, a beautiful monarch butterfly drifted in through the open window, circling the office before landing on Maria's photograph. murmuring a prayer in Spanish. Karim felt a profound sense of rightness settle over him. This was what success truly looked like. Not the cold statistics of quarterly reports, but the warm reality of lives transformed and communities united. The butterfly took flight again, leading their eyes to the window and the vibrant garden beyond, where children played and learned among the flowers that had once been just a dream in a young woman's journal. "Shall we go outside?" he suggested, standing and offering his arm to Rosa. "I believe there's still time to plant those new seedlings before dinner." As they made their way to the garden, Zain running ahead to greet his friends, Karim realized that his life had indeed come full circle. The empire he had built of steel and glass now served a greater purpose, nurturing not just profits, but people. And in gaining a true family, a son who laughed freely, a mother figure who guided with wisdom, and the lasting legacy of a brave young woman who had dared to stand for what was right, he had found a success beyond measure. The Maria Martinez Youth Leadership Academy stood as a testament to dreams made real, its modern sustainable architecture blending seamlessly with the surrounding gardens. On this bright morning, 5 years after a butterfly had changed the course of so many lives, the academy was preparing to welcome its first full class of students. Karim walked through the bustling halls, taking in the excited chatter of young voices and the vibrant energy that filled every corner. The walls were adorned with student artwork and inspirational quotes, including Maria's words that had started it all. "True success grows from seeds of compassion." "Mr. Al-Rahman," a familiar voice called out. Miguel, now the Academy's head of agricultural entrepreneurship, approached with a group of new students in tow. "Would you mind sharing your story with our first years? They're especially interested in how the foundation began." Before Karim could respond, Zain appeared around the corner, now a poised 12-year-old who had grown into his role as an unofficial ambassador for the Foundation's youth programs. "Can I help tell the story, Father? I remember everything about that day with the butterfly." "Of course, Habibi," Karim smiled, leading the group to the Academy's central courtyard, a beautiful open space designed around a butterfly garden that had become the heart of the campus. As they settled onto benches surrounding a fountain, Karim noticed Rosa watching from her office balcony above. She had insisted on being involved in the Academy's daily operations, despite his concerns about her taking on too much in her advancing years. "I'm not getting older," she would say. "I'm getting wiser, and wisdom is meant to be shared." "It all began with a butterfly," Zain started, his voice confident as he addressed the students. "I was 7 years old and I didn't see my father much because he was always working. But then one day," as Zain recounted the story of Rosa's arrival in their lives, Karim found himself reflecting on the extraordinary chain of events that had led to this moment. The Academy now stood on the same property where Tariq had once planned to build luxury condominiums, land that had been reclaimed and repurposed for education and community development. But the most amazing part, Zain continued, wasn't just the changes in the company or the foundation. It was how we became a real family. Grandma Rosa taught us that success isn't just about making money. It's about making a difference. The students leaned forward, captivated by the personal nature of the story. Many of them came from challenging backgrounds, similar to those that the foundation sought to help, making the message of transformation particularly meaningful. "And now," Miguel added, gesturing to the thriving gardens around them, "we're teaching a new generation how to build businesses that help communities grow. Every student here will graduate with both practical skills and a deep understanding of ethical leadership." A flutter of wings drew everyone's attention as a monarch butterfly danced through the courtyard, causing ripples of excitement among the students. Karim caught Rosa's eye, sharing a knowing smile. These moments of serendipity had become so common that they hardly seemed like coincidence anymore. Later that afternoon, as Karim reviewed applications for the Foundation's expanding international program, Rosa entered his office with her usual tray of coffee and cookies, a tradition she refused to give up despite her elevated position as the Academy's director. "I received a letter today," she said, settling into her favorite chair, "from Rebecca Torres at the City Archives. They want to create a permanent exhibition about Maria's work and the Foundation's impact on the community. They're calling it the Butterfly Effect, how one person's courage changed a city." Karim set aside his papers, touched by the continued recognition of Maria's legacy. She would never have sought this kind of attention. No, Rosa agreed, her eyes misting slightly. She simply did what she believed was right. But perhaps that's why her story continues to inspire others to do the same. Through the window, they could see Zain leading a group of younger students through the butterfly garden, teaching them about the importance of creating sustainable habitats. He had grown into a remarkable young man, combining his father's business acumen with Rosa's compassionate wisdom. Sometimes I wonder, Harry mused, what would have happened if that butterfly hadn't led Zain into the street that day? If he hadn't been, Rosa reached across the desk to squeeze his hand. Life has a way of bringing us what we need, people, even if we don't recognize it at first. The butterfly was just the beginning. The real magic was in what we chose to do afterward. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows through the academy's corridors, Karim realized that their story was far from over. Each new student who walked through these doors carried the potential to create their own ripples of positive change. The seeds they had planted, of ethics, compassion, and community, would continue to grow in ways they might never fully know. And somewhere, he liked to think, Maria was smiling, seeing how her courage had bloomed into something beautiful and lasting, touching lives far beyond the confines of time and space. 10 years to the day after a butterfly changed their lives, the Al Rahman estate hosted a very special gathering. The sprawling grounds, now a certified wildlife sanctuary and educational center, were filled with people whose lives had been touched by the Maria Martinez Foundation and its various initiatives. Under the shade of mature trees that had once been saplings in the first community garden, Rosa sat in a place of honor, surrounded by 3 generations of success stories. Her silver hair now pure white, her face marked by years of joy and wisdom, she held court with the quiet dignity that had become her trademark. "Tell us again, Grandma Rosa," called out one of the younger children, part of the Academy's newest class, "about the day you saved Mr. Al-Rahman's son." Before she could begin, Zain stepped forward, now a tall young man of 17 who carried himself with the same quiet confidence as his father. "I think I should tell this part," he said, settling onto the grass among the children. "After all, I'm the one who chased that butterfly." Karim watched from the periphery, his heart full. The annual Foundation Family Reunion, as it had come to be known, had grown from a small gathering into a celebration that drew people from across the country. Former students, program graduates, community leaders, and families whose lives had been transformed by the Foundation's work, all coming together to share stories and strengthen bonds. Ahmad, who now headed the Foundation's transportation initiative providing eco-friendly community transit solutions, approached with his daughter beside him. "Sir, Sarah has some news she'd like to share." The young woman, who had once asked to interview Karim for a school project, beamed with pride. "I've been accepted to the Maria Martinez Fellowship Program. I'll be helping to establish community gardens and business education programs in underserved communities across South America." "Maria would have loved that," Rosa said softly, her eyes bright with unshed tears. She always dreamed of taking these programs international. The Foundation had indeed grown beyond anything they could have imagined. The Youth Leadership Academy had spawned satellite campuses in 3 countries, while the Business Incubator program had helped launch over 1,000 successful ethical enterprises. But more than the numbers, it was the personal transformations that meant the most. As if to emphasize this point, Miguel stepped up to the microphone set up for the day's ceremonies. His landscaping business had evolved into one of the country's leading sustainable development firms, and he now served on the Foundation's board of directors. 10 years ago, he began, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd, "I was just a kid helping out in a community garden. Today, I want to announce that our firm is establishing a full scholarship program for young entrepreneurs focused on environmental and social justice initiatives. We're calling it the Rosa Martinez Future Leaders Fund." The surprise on Rosa's face was quickly replaced by tears of joy as the crowd erupted in applause. Karim moved to stand beside her, offering his handkerchief with a smile. "Now you've inspired so many just as Maria inspired you," he said softly. The ripples keep spreading. As the afternoon progressed, Zain took the stage to announce the Academy's latest initiative, a global ethical business network designed to connect Foundation graduates and and create opportunities for collaborative social enterprise projects. His presentation, confident and compassionate, showed how fully he had embraced the values that had transformed their family and community. Later, as the sun began to set, Karim found himself back in his office with Rosa and Zain, sharing a quiet moment amidst the day's celebrations. The room had changed over the years. Family photos now outnumbered business awards, and children's artwork brightened the once austere walls. "Look," Zain said suddenly, pointing to a window. A group of monarch butterflies, drawn to the abundant gardens, danced through the evening light. "They always seem to show up on important days, because they know their family too," Rosa smiled, reaching for both their hands. "Everything is connected. The butterflies, the gardens, the people whose lives we touch." Maria understood that. She saw the potential for good in everyone and everything. Karim looked at his son, who would soon be heading to college but had already committed to continuing his involvement with the foundation. He looked at Rosa, who had become the heart of not just their family, but an entire movement for positive change. And he looked out at the grounds where hundreds of people now gathered, each carrying forward the legacy of compassion and courage that had started with one young woman's stand for truth. "We've built something remarkable," he said. "But it's not really about the buildings or programs, is it? It's about the connections we've made, the lives we've touched, the changes we've inspired in each other. And the changes yet to come," Zain added thoughtfully. "This is just the beginning." As twilight settled over the estate, the gardens came alive with thousands of tiny lights. A surprise installation the Academy students had created for the anniversary. Against this magical backdrop, 3 generations of transformed lives celebrated not just what had been accomplished, but what was still to come. The butterfly that had started it all may have been long gone, but its effect continued to ripple outward, touching lives in ever-widening circles of hope and possibility. And in the heart of it all, a family bound not by